In the 1820s, a young boy named William Webb Ellis allegedly picked up a ball and ran with it, and so rugby was formed. You might think that's simple stuff, you might think that's a story over and done with, rugby just developed from there. No, because there are two types of rugby. There's actually more than two types of rugby, but there's two main types, rugby union and rugby league. And I'm going to explain to you today about how we got into this situation. But let's start with what the main differences are between rugby union and rugby league. They are mostly quite similar, you have to pass the ball backwards, it's an egg-shaped ball, pretty simple. But there are quite a few fundamental differences. The first, rugby union has 15 players, rugby league has 13. That's two fewer forwards for rugby league. A try in league is worth 4 points, a conversion is worth 2, a penalty is worth 2, and a drop goal is worth 1. Whereas in union, a try is 5 points, a conversion is 2 points, a penalty and a drop goal are both worth 3 points. There are other main differences, like in league, after every 6 tackles, possession changes hands, whereas in union, you can keep possession as long as you want, as long as the other side doesn't take it from you. Set pieces are more important in union, scrums are much more important, line-outs exist, they don't exist in rugby league. Rucks and mauls happen in union in a different sense to how they happen in league, because once the player's down in league, they get up, put the ball between their legs, and the next phase continues. Simple. So hopefully that basic overview hasn't put you off the rest of this video, because now we're diving into the history of it. Here is why rugby union and rugby league both exist. So the first rules of rugby were written in the 1840s. It starts to gain popularity in English schools, and it spreads throughout the British Empire, making its way as far away as Australia and New Zealand. The Rugby Football Union was made in 1871. Other unions pop up around the world. It's starting to grow, but one of the key things at the time was amateurism. That was a key factor in sports throughout England. Whether you look at cricket, football or rugby, amateurism is a major factor in all of these sports as they're starting out, which basically means you can't be paid. You're doing it for the love of the game. And it comes up over and over again. You're supposed to be a gentleman and you're supposed to play for free. But around this time, changes are happening. Working class people are given time off. What? That's crazy, at least for the time. That's, I guess, what they thought. It was crazy. Working class people could have their weekends off. They were allowed to relax. They were allowed to play sport. They were allowed to watch sport. And this kind of helped sports boom in the 1800s in England. And so rugby starts to become a lot more popular, and it's becoming much more popular, particularly in the north. Now, during this time of rugby's history, clubs in the north of England were very good and made up a lot of the top players in the country. And many were working class, and they also wanted compensation for playing. Rugby at the time was just as dangerous, if not more dangerous, than it is now. It was pretty crazy back then. If you look at some of the laws, it just didn't make sense. It's just silly. You're just looking to hurt yourself. And so they would look after their body. They wouldn't want to hurt themselves because they would need to go back to work. They still need to earn a living despite being some of the greatest players of the age. And then comes the 1888 tour of Australia and New Zealand. This is the first Lions tour. When you look at the Lions badge since 1888, this is what it is. Now, they weren't the Lions as we know them now, but it effectively set everything up for that. So this was quite a historic tour for many reasons, but it also helped contribute to the foundation of rugby league, because players were being paid. They were being paid on this tour. But there was a clear divide between the gentleman amateur and the working class player on the tour. And it culminated around one player named Jack Close, or Klaus. I'm going to say Close. He was a player from the north, and he had been dobbed in for accepting £15 from tour organisers for clothes. Now, £15 doesn't sound like much, but it is this much in today's money. There you go. He never denied that he took the money. He said he did, and he said he would happily pay it back. But the RFU said, no, not on. You can't do that. And they banned him. He was on the tour the entire time. I think they played 35 games, something like that. He was just sitting there watching it. He was banned. That's a bit unfair. But the fact was, pretty much all the players were being paid on the tour. So when they came back, there was this issue of what are we going to do? What's going to happen? Because the Yorkshire Rugby Union had a lot of their players taking the money, and they didn't know if they were going to be able to play them. So they're like, you're not playing for a while. We're going to see what the RFU does. And what does the RFU do? They just have everyone sign a statement saying you weren't paid. So it kind of swept everything under the rug. Kind of made issues go away for a little bit, and they could carry on playing rugby. So I guess they worked it out. But not for long, because there was starting to become a lot more of a split between the gentleman amateur and the working class professional. And the RFU became a lot more strict on amateurism, so the split looked like it was going to become inevitable. So we're moving into the 1890s now, and there is a motion proposed specifically to pay players. It is called broken time payments, basically paying the players for them taking time off work to play rugby, to represent their country in some cases. That was voted down because it was against the spirit of the game. They wanted to keep it amateur. And that was it for the northern clubs. That was done. There was a clear north-south divide, and something had to be done about it. So the players were becoming a bit sick of all of this. I think the clubs were becoming a bit sick of all of this as well, and they decided to do something about it. And it helped that a lot of the top players were from these northern clubs. They were just better. They made up about 2/3 of that Lions team that went on the 1888 tour. They were clearly very good players, and they were being punished pretty much for their background. And that's when a meeting took place on the 29th of August, 1895 in Huddersfield. Yes, that beautiful place right there, Huddersfield, full of history, sporting history. More than 20 clubs come together and they say, we're just sick of it. We're done with it, and we're going to form our own union. And that is when the Northern Rugby Union was formed. They broke away from the Rugby Football Union. The RFU, they issue sanctions. They say, you can't do this. They ban players, are upset with teams that play against the Northern Union. But that's not going to stop them. And it certainly didn't, because they really took off at that point. They created their own league, they really expanded, players were being paid, and then by 1904, the Northern Union actually had more clubs registered to it than the Rugby Football Union did. Not great for rugby union. And you start to see other splits worldwide over similar-ish issues, pretty much the same issues in New Zealand and Australia. Rugby league kind of came out of players being treated unfairly and finally being compensated for taking on some dangerous work. So during this time, a lot of good rugby union players would switch to rugby league so they could be paid. And it wasn't until the 1990s that rugby union became professional. Now, in some places, union was just a bit too far behind league. If you look at Australia now, league is the dominant code of rugby. Union could catch up at some point, but league is just very, very well done. Papua New Guinea, look there, and their national sport is basically rugby league. If you look at England, rugby union, I think you would probably say is bigger, but that might be because it has more money in it now. But rugby league's still holding on pretty well. It's still very strong in the north of England. In New Zealand, I'd say union is still stronger, but league is poaching a lot of top talent. When it comes down to all of it, it's just about treating the players fairly. It just seems odd that a lot of the decision makers at the time would just go, no, it's all about amateurism. It's about being a gentleman. It's about the spirit of the game. The spirit of the game and that sort of thinking might be killing your game. It might be forcing others elsewhere. Now, I understand there's a lot of people that might not like all the money in sport, but these guys are putting their body on the line and they probably deserve some compensation for it. So when you see these crazy big wages now, just remember there are a lot of people back in the 1800s who weren't being paid that much or being taken advantage of. So it's crazy how far it's come. And so, because of unfair compensation, because of money, that is why we have two main rugby codes. That is why we have rugby union and why we have rugby league. Could there be more in the future? Possibly. I'll probably look at sevens at some point and touch. But those are the two main dominant ones. Now, if you enjoyed this type of video, please leave a like and subscribe. And if there's anything else you want me to have a look at, please feel free to comment down below. I'd really appreciate it. And thank you very much for watching.